The next topic is sex. And again, I've kind of run out of time to cover it. But since I postponed it once, I won't postpone it today. We will talk about it. I found, we put out a video, I guess, Christian put out a video of, my 7-minute spiel on Lily Phillips' 100 guys in one day sex thing, with my commentary on that. And I found the comments beneath the video really, really, really interesting. Right? Really interesting. For a number of reasons. One is the extent to which people think that what she did is no big deal. One of the ways they express this is, well, I mean, 100 isn't even the record. Some woman had sex with 500 people in one day, and some other woman had sex with 220 people, and they keep coming, and some people keep track of these things. So that I found quite revolting and shocking. And then it's, let's see. One guy says, probably the first time I've disagreed with you on. Really? It can't be, because this is so fundamental to, it's just a positive view of man, of humanity, of man and women. How can you agree with me on the nature of man and think this is cool? I mean, this is horrifically evil for both her and the men. They're all worse off for it. But then I got, of course, I also got, views of my views on sex are nutty. We should all be Christians. Here's one. What is Iran turning into Christian conservative now? Isn't objectivism all about doing what you want when you want? So that, I got a few of those, right? And the answer to that is no. Objectivism is not about doing what you want when you want. Absolutely not. Now, certainly you have a right to do it. I'm not arguing, who argued? Somebody argued that all these men should be put in jail, right? I'm certainly not arguing that any people should be put in jail here. I'm not arguing that it should be illegal. I'm arguing this is despicable and disgusting and offensive and immoral. Immoral. It is immoral for the woman and the men who participated. But wait a minute, Johan. Doesn't objectivism say you should do whatever you want when you want? No. Objectivism says you should do what is rational. What is rational. You should do what is consistent with your nature as a human being, as a rational being, as a conceptual being. It means you should do that which promotes your self-esteem. It means, objectivism means you should have pride in yourself. You should seek out moral goodness, moral perfection. It means that you should have self-respect, necessary for self-esteem. This is the exact opposite of that. This is, for the woman, turning herself into a masturbation machine for man. It's an act that has no meaning, no purpose. There's no pleasure involved in 100 people sticking their penis into you and masturbating on you. There's no pleasure involved in that. And you could see how traumatized she was at the end of it. And as a man, to use a woman like that is, get a sex doll. At least you won't be sharing it with another 100 people. And none of you, not the men, not the woman, none of you are individuals. You're all just automatons performing an animalistic act that has no meaning, that is emptied for meaning, for a kind of a sense of, call it momentary pleasure. But I doubt she experienced much pleasure. I doubt she had an orgasm. But yes, 100 men had orgasms. But orgasms like that, how enjoyable can that really be? Meaningless. Again, you'd do better with the sex machine. Now, she did get paid. She got paid. Does that make it okay because you get paid? Is demeaning yourself? Is demeaning yourself for money good? Is prostituting yourself for money a good? Again, you should have a legal right to do it, but morality demands the best of you. Morality demands that you be a producer, not turn yourself into a piece of flesh to be abused. It's a big deal long term. Absolutely. This is devastating long term because this undermines your self-respect and your self-esteem. You're not a human being. You're not living up to what's possible as a human being. Now, objectivism is not prudish about sex. I don't care who you have sex with. I don't care how many times. And for that matter, all the power to you if you want to explore threesomes, foursomes, small orgies. But there is a limit. Sex is about a human connection. Sex is about visibility and emotionally connecting to another human being. It's the sharing of physical pleasure. Because if it's just you having physical pleasure, you can masturbate. And to turn your body into something other people use is demeaning and destructive to your self-esteem. And it's saying that you're just an animal. There's nothing human about it. It's a negation of being human. Whereas a sex act with somebody you like is elevating because it's the kind of connection animals cannot have, only human beings can have. Now, my position is you should have sex before marriage. I think it's immoral to wait until you're married to have sex. And you should experiment with sex and you should try different things with sex. But avoid total strangers and avoid large numbers of total strangers because that demeans it. It empties it. It turns you into an animal. It makes you inhuman. And again, objectivism doesn't tell you do whatever you feel like. Objectivism tells you do whatever is rationally in your long-term self-interest. This is not in the men's and not in the woman's. She at least got paid. I don't know what's in it for them. The cool factor of being part of a disgusting performance, all videotaped. Yeah, David makes a good point. Even sex workers, good sex workers that make real money and that invest in their profession as a profession, a big part of why they make the big bucks, the prostitutes that charge $1,000 an hour, a big part of the service they provide is an emotional connection. That's part of what makes them, that valuable. They're not just a hole in which to masturbate. What Lily did is demean herself, debase herself. And the men who participated are beneath contempt morally. Legally, they can do it. Morally, they're beneath contempt. And that's objectivism. I can't even imagine what Ayn Rand would think about this. I mean, God. Given, and this is the point, and this is an important point to make. Ayn Rand viewed sex as super important. It was crucial to a healthy life. It was wonderful and amazing. I mean, read the sex scenes in Atlas Shrugged. In particular, the first time Reardon and Dagny have sex. And Reardon views it animalistically and kind of Dagny's response to that. She views it as this amazing, beautiful thing. As an intimate connection, as a way of exposing yourself to another person in a way you don't do in any other context in life. Sex is something that builds you, that makes you better when done right. And connects you with the other person in ways that you cannot connect otherwise. This is why you should have sex with the person you're going to marry before you marry them, or before you make the decision to marry them, to make sure that you're compatible, not just physically compatible, but spiritually, emotionally compatible. So sex is too good, too beautiful, too wonderful for this ugliness. What this act is, this is nihilism. This is nihilism as applied to sex. This is the emptying for sex of everything that it means. It's the turning of sex into a purely physical, materialistic nothingness. Because again, there was no pleasure there, enough for Lily, enough for the guys. Not really. So I'm going to take this from the chat because I think it's interesting. He says, okay, I understand the short term it's disintegrating, but it's not like she has some mystical taint on her now. But I agree in the short term there are psychological implications. You think psychological implications don't have a long-term taint? The taint is not a cultural taint. The taint is not a scarlet letter. The taint is a psychological taint. The taint is she has to live with herself. She has to live with the knowledge of what she did. She has to live with her own self-perception. And so do the 100 men. Of course there's a taint, a long-term taint, on her own soul. She knows, and she will know long-term, that when she was 20, 25, however old she is, she participated in an animalistic ritual that was empty of content and demeaning to herself. Now, she might be able to redeem herself from this. She might be able to identify the mistake that she made and build up a better sex life and a better life in the future. Maybe. But the idea that short-term psychological damage has no long-term impact, God, that's exactly the opposite. Short-term psychological damage scars you for the long run. I mean, almost always, almost everyone in therapy with real, big, significant psychological problems is because they caused themselves short-term psychological damage in the past. And those scars don't go away. Those disintegrations don't go away. Those self-evaluations don't go away. They don't. They stick with you. Now, I want to say one other thing, which is stunning because there were a number of comments around this. Again, what is Iran turning into a Christian conservative now? And this is the idea that to call the behavior of people moral or immoral is religious. No, religion does not have a monopoly over morality. Or to talk about a spiritual experience is religious. No, religion does not have a monopoly over the spirit, the human spirit. The spirit is that of consciousness. It's the experience of consciousness. You don't experience the world around you materialistically. You do have a soul. That soul is the sum of what you've made of yourself, the sum of your conclusions, the sum of your values. And it's reflected in your emotional state of being. It's reflected in your emotion, how you express yourself emotionally, in what you respond to emotionally. It expresses itself in who you have sex with and who you don't. And so the idea that being spiritual is being religious is absurd. What? So if I'm an atheist, I can't have a deeply, profoundly, emotionally meaningful experience listening to music? Well, of course I can. Of course I can. Louis G says she's planning 1,000 next. She posted about it. Yeah, that just means, it just shows how sick she really is. I mean, she is a sick person. She has a sick soul. She has a sick spirit. She is somebody you should feel sorry for. She's somebody who I don't think will ever recover from this, in spite of what Fuller Business says. You cannot recover from demeaning yourself to that extent. You are as close to committing suicide as you can be, spiritually, in terms of your character, in terms of your self-evaluation, in terms of your psychology. So don't let religion steal morality from us. Don't let religion steal, having a spiritual experience from us. We should own those terms. And I don't intend to give them up. I don't intend to abandon them. And sex is a great illustration. Sex is, this unity of mind and body. Mind is not body, in a sense of they're two different integrated aspects. They're not separate, they're not in conflict, but they're integrated, but they're separate. You have an emotional response and you have a physical response. The orgasm, simple orgasm, is the physical response. But you also feel something. That's the spiritual response. And you also feel a deep, meaningful, significant connection with the person you do it with. I am not a dualist because I believe they're integrated. But there is a difference between your experience and the thing itself. They're not the same thing. They're not the same thing. So somebody else writes, so now we are brothers' keepers, the keepers of our brothers' morals. Yeah. Judge and be willing to be judged. Fuller Business says, but Yuan, you and her obviously have different psychologies. How can you know how much this affects her objectively? Because I know something about human beings, about what human life requires. I know that lying is not a good strategy for success and destroys you psychologically. Even though, and that's true of all human beings, we have a particular nature. We manifest that nature in a variety of different ways as individuals, but we have a particular nature. Lying to all human beings is destructive. Cheating, stealing to all human beings is destructive. Having sex with 100 guys is destructive to all women. If you know anything about the nature of a woman, it seems pretty obvious to me. But again, the nature of human beings, what we need from sex, what we get from sex, and what sex, means. So, yeah, politically, I have no problem, but politics is not what's important in life. What's important in life is ethics. And in ethics, absolutely, that ethically you have to judge. And ethically means, what does it do to a human being, right? Again, the standard is rationality. The standard is self-esteem. Is this consistent with reason and self-esteem? No. And therefore, she will suffer until she makes recompense somehow. She will suffer pretty much forever for this, because she's going against reason and self-esteem. And that is, how did we get to reason and self-esteem as being crucial values for human beings? We got there by understanding human nature, by understanding what kind of animal the human being is and what this particular animal requires for its survival, for its flourishing, for its thriving.